Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be joined now by two people at the creative heart of the Ellen DeGeneres show success. Please welcome, and this is a bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to read it, producer and executive vice president of current programming at Telepictures Productions, which basically means he's the king of all things Ellen, David McGuire. And digital co-executive producer, which makes him the prince of the Ellen DeGeneres show, Daniel Leary. If we have time at the end, I'll take some questions from the audience for David and Daniel, but I obviously reserve the right to drop that without apology or reference. Before we get stuck in, let's just have a look at some of Ellen's digital milestones. So it's pretty clear just from watching that why the Ellen show is one of the biggest talk shows in America. Done 14 seasons now. Debuted back in 2003. It's got another 3 on the way, going to run through to 2020. It's won 59 Daytime Emmy Awards, including 5 consecutive digital awards, very relevant to what we're going to be talking about. Holds the record for the most awarded in the Outstanding Talk Show category, and you've got 17 People's Choice Awards as well. Basically, the show is doing fine, isn't it?
It's doing okay. It's okay.
Tell me a bit about how it started and how it's evolved.
It started, well, first of all, thank Edinburgh Television Festival. Thank you so much for including us in this. We're honored in YouTube when you called and asked us to be a part of this. You know, we broadcast this show from Burbank, California, which is really, really far away, and the thought that we could come here and be a part of this meant a lot to us, so thank you all for having us. It started so long ago. I mean, we're starting our 15th season. It was a time when Ellen was a famous stand-up comic in America. She had done some HBO specials, which really sort of put her on the map. She had a sitcom, which just celebrated its 20th anniversary of her being the first character in primetime television to come out of the closet. And just the television landscape was a very, very different place then. So when people sort of toyed with the idea of Ellen hosting a talk show for years, and then some people at Warner Brothers sort of really believed in it and believed in her. The hard part was convincing television stations that this, genius comedian, but gay comedian would be able to resonate and be relevant to people who watched talk shows in America at that time. This was before digital, so it was really housewives who stayed home and watched these shows. So they had a hard time wrapping their head around that. And for Ellen, what she learned throughout her career was if the show was going to be successful at all, it had to be authentic to who she is. It couldn't be her trying to be Oprah. It couldn't be her trying to be Johnny Carson. It had to be completely built around her. So she knew everything about comedy, but she didn't know a lot about TV and daytime TV particularly. So she paired herself up with some people who had a lot of experience in comedy, but also in daytime television, a woman named Mary Connolly and a man named Ed Glavin and Andy Lassner, and they were the 3 original executive producers that really just sat with Ellen and listened to her and built this show to be entirely authentic to who she is as a person, which is of course hilarious, but also kind and funny. She knew she wanted to have popular music. She wanted to be relevant. She wanted to create sort of water cooler moments for America to be able to enjoy, and she wanted to create a talk show that you could watch in front of your kids. On the Ellen show, she's very proud of the fact that no one really gets hurt. And if your kids are home from school, it's a safe place where you can watch that show. And there's a lot of shows in the afternoon in America where maybe you don't want your 8 or 10-year-old kid sitting there. So she knew she wanted to do that. And obviously she and we did not know how successful it would become. For a few years, it was a comedy variety show. It sort of moved on from there to involve human interest segments and real people, but it never really lost the spirit of who she was. And it's really just grown from there and become just a real big part of, pop culture in America.
And so what prompted you to first start putting content onto YouTube then? Because you were very early adopters.
At the beginning, it was really sharing. We wanted to share Ellen with the world. We wanted to share Ellen with people who might not be home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. In those days, people had DVRs or maybe they had their machines to record the shows, but we felt like we had a lot of really, really good content that we could share. Back then, YouTube, digital platforms were really seen as a form of promotion to basically sell your show. Put an advert on it and try to get people to tune in during the day. And as much as we saw the value in that, we also saw the value in expanding our audience and expanding the sort of the growth, not domestically in the States, but also internationally, for the success of the Ellen brand. And so we, weren't afraid of putting on content that was 3.5 minutes long, because we wanted it to have a narrative. We wanted to have a beginning, middle, and an end, and be something that people felt that they were getting sort of like content out of, as opposed to just a commercial to go find that content, which they may or may not be able to do.
I think they also saw it as something fun and new, and a new place to play in. Our 4 executive producers that David mentioned, Ed Glavin, Mary Connolly, Andy Lasser, and Kevin Lehman, are all really fueled by what is going to delight our audience. And I think they all realized that the more kids they saw watching content, they were doing it on their phones, on tablets, and they wanted to get their content into their hands. And so it was just another they really see themselves as content creators, and that YouTube was just another platform to serve that content like the show is.
And so how do you see YouTube and television working together now, and what have you taken from the stuff that you put on YouTube, and how's that informed what you put on the telly show?
It's been a lot. At the beginning, we created a part of our staff who basically just devoured YouTube and looked at everything that was out there, what was resonating, what wasn't resonating, figuring out why something gets 100,000 views versus something that's really equally as funny gets 5,000, and just really sort of studying it, looking at the research, and just looking at what was out there. And we started to see things that we fell in love with that we would put on the talk show, just to sort of like celebrate them, like this little beautiful kid from Samoa who's a wonderful dancer, and just give them their like moment to celebrate them. And those segments became very popular on the talk show. And the flip side of that, there would be things that we would do on the talk show that we would put on YouTube, maybe geared towards a younger audience, that would explode and would become water cooler conversation. So it really was about finding the synergy, going back and forth between what was working in a digital world. When we started this show, there wasn't really a digital department. There was a website at the very beginning, which basically told you when it was on and showed you a promo for that day's show. And then Daniel came aboard, and we created a whole digital team, and then it really took off. And they started to really understand. And one thing that I think we were good at is we figured out when something was about to go viral or when it was going viral. We were on a phone, on an airplane to that family, and we really sort of like were aggressive about going after that stuff. And Daniel and his team were very, very pivotal in our growth in that space.
Well, there's a whole cycle to the content, right? The first meeting that we have every morning is a meeting that we call the topical meeting, where everyone who has found any videos that they think is hilarious or amazing or for whatever reason going viral, that they bring them down to the meeting, and we all watch them as a team and say, oh, well, we've got to have that person on the show, oh, we've got to put that on Ellen's Twitter, or sort of disseminate it from there. And often we will find some clip that we think is just so cool that we will then show to Ellen, and she will say, bring them to me. And then we have to fly them in from the Philippines or wherever they were, and then they're on the show, and then it airs on TV the next day. And we take that content and put it on YouTube where it had blown up originally. So this audience that had found this young kid, whoever it may be, and loved and supported and caused their video to blow up, is now being celebrated on the show in this very sort of public forum, and then they can celebrate that again. And so it becomes this great sort of cycle of content for us.
So do you spend quite a lot of time just calling up people in far-flung places going, would you like to come on the Ellen Show?
Yeah, for a while we thought about maybe just having a producer permanently in the Philippines, where apparently they're just the best singers.
One of the best compliments we have is we talk to our friends who produce other television shows, and we're all going after the same thing sometimes. And they'll say, all right, well, they said they're going to do our show, but if Ellen calls by 4 o'clock, they're going to do Ellen. So, use that how you may. But it speaks to the power.
I'm guessing your friends don't really like you. Oh, brilliant.
But it speaks to the power of the brand that, people upload things trying to reach Ellen at this point. So people will upload videos to YouTube the way they used to write is a letter in hopes that she'll respond and she'll read it. And people will upload videos, and it's just become an amazing community and an amazing sort of feeder into our show that we didn't have 14 years ago, quite frankly. But It's really, really fun, and it really, resonates, and it speaks to like the spirit of Ellen in just capturing this like moment in time that is something that audiences can enjoy not only in the States but everywhere.
Yeah, our favorite thing in the topical meeting is when we're watching a video that we all agree is hilarious, and it ends with someone saying, "Oh man, you got to send that to Ellen." It's like, it's worked,
We're going to have a look at a clip now that did very well on YouTube for you. I think you found a young British girl to do a little thing. Absolutely loving it. So how does something like that come about then? How does that partnership, I guess, with Jumbo Juice happen?
So the first thing is Adele, who's at the time touring the States and is one of the biggest stars on the planet, and is also hilarious. And she feels, that she's in a safe environment, and she's willing to have fun with us because she's seen on video clips of things that other people have done where they're having fun. So you book Adele to go on the talk show, and you hope that some publicist doesn't get in the way and lets us have fun with Adele, quite frankly. So she shows up, and she loves Ellen, and she loves the show, and she's seen what we've done before, and she's like, "I'm game, just tell me what to do." So there's a Jamba Juice and a Starbucks on the Warner Brothers lot. We rig up the cameras without the staff scene, send her down there, and you never really know what you're going to get in this moment because sometimes these things work and sometimes they don't work. When Adele started eating the grass and talking about Swishy Chug, which we just made up about 10 minutes earlier, we're like, holy shit, this is going to go viral. This is like, you can feel it. You feel it in the control room of the TV show at that moment, that we're going to take this little moment from our talk show and send it out, and it's going to, sail underneath Adele's wings, and it's going to be a big deal. What we didn't do was contact Jamba Juice 6 months ago and say, okay, here's the setup. We're going to go into your place. We're going to bring in Adele, because number one, Adele's people are never going to allow us to do that, and Jamba Juice, we don't know them, whether they're going to. But the amazing thing was, Swishy Chug just took off, and we didn't know what it was going to be, and Jamba Juice were in the right place at the right time. We didn't have any formal agreement with them whatsoever. They called us and said, do you mind if we put this on our website? We'd like to create a coupon for 30% off Swishy Chugs tomorrow, so everyone who's in on this joke can go to our website knowing that it's not even a real drink, but they just, they got it, and it connected, and it turned out to be a great opportunity for them, but it also sort of took our joke even further, which was even better. And that's not sometimes the writers write this stuff that pans out that way, and sometimes you just take advantage of these things as they're going viral. And I think by the next night, it was tens and tens of millions of views.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of how we approach content. It's the show is already in a variety format, and they create these small pieces that are snackable and shareable and worthy of watching more than once. That's really, our goal is to create content that people want to watch. I've seen that clip 20 times, and it still makes me laugh every time I watch it. And on the TV show, you only get to watch it once for the most part, and digitally it has this life where people can share it and watch it over and over and over again.
And when you're creating content like that for YouTube, have you got an eye on the kind of the financials as well? Are you looking at how you can monetize these things?
To be honest, you're looking for content that's going to resonate. That's it. You're looking for content that's going to be funny, that's going to be hilarious, that's going to work. And then in success, the monetization takes care of itself. We don't go into something thinking, let's do this clip because we can attach an advertiser to it and we can charge that advertiser X amount of money, because that's a disservice to our audience. It goes back to sort of Ellen's humor and Ellen's authenticity in the show that the producers put on the air each day, which is serve the audience and serve Ellen's fans first. That's what wins. And then behind that, obviously, there's a team of business people that will figure out the right way to monetize that. But we want to create a really, really large tent and let everybody into it that's welcome, that gets it, that gets Ellen's humor, that gets her warmth in their spirit. And then Daniel will figure out the digital side of it. The TV side of it is already pretty much taken care of. And we'll figure out ways to monetize and be successful once we get the content right. It's all about the content.
How easy was the transition from being just a TV show with, as you say, with a website, to being a TV show that has a very successful YouTube channel? How did you bring about that organizational change?
Hire a lot of bright young kids and get the hell out of the way is how we did it. For us, we knew our voice and we knew what it was. And to Daniel's point, we had all this sort of, our show's a variety show that lasts for an hour. If you don't like something on the Ellen Show, you know that 6 minutes later, it's going to change. There's going to be something new. There's going to be an interview with Matt Lauer from the Today Show, who's our morning, talk show host of the Today Show in New York. And then someone's going to jump out of a table and scare the crap out of them. And then you're going to move on, and Adele's going to be eating Jamba Juice, and then there's going to be a musical thing. It's a real variety show, so it cuts up well for digital. Each segment's about 6 to 7 minutes long. It's very rarely that you're going to see a conversation that's going to take place over 20 minutes because the audience doesn't really have that kind of attention span anymore, honestly, to have that type of conversation. It's not that type of show. So we created a digital staff, and we really sort of thought about things that are going to go on the talk show that are going to play digitally, but you can't just do things 100% like that because you've got your talk show audience that you have to appeal to as well. It's really about finding the balance and taking advantage of opportunities when you find them.
And obviously you're heading up the digital side of things, Daniel, but do you see it as being a separate entity? Are there two teams, or is it all very integrated?
Oh, it's incredibly integrated. It all really happens very organically. Our interest in YouTube, our interest in all digital things really stems from our 4 executive producers who really are interested and care about being able to develop that audience. And, whereas most people a while ago, I guess this was, 7 or 8 years ago when we started our YouTube channel, were hesitant to put too much content on YouTube because they thought, oh, that'll eat away from the show audiences where we know how to make our money. Our executive producers really wanted to run at it from this philosophy that David has brought up of really all they care about is delighting their audience and delivering on that promise. And what we found was that we built a totally separate audience of these kids who loved watching Ellen. They probably grew up watching Ellen with their moms and now are watching it on their own and wouldn't watch it on television. So we're not worried necessarily. We actually found that the audience we developed on YouTube helped our audience on the TV side because there was so much buzz around, millions of views around this, viral clip that everyone wanted to watch what else was going on.
All the meetings take place in the same place. It's the key people who are responsible for the whole thing. Think of it as like the TV show's one planet, digital's another planet, and they work off each other and they need each other. But it's a holistic approach. It's not like a separate team down the street. It's one group it's one community. And when we think about distributing content, we think about, well, okay, we've got 6 different places to go. We've got our audience at YouTube. We've got our audience on the talk show. We've got Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. It's all sort of thought through, but the team, it's not individual siphons. It's an entire team.
Our digital presence grew entirely out of our executive producers and their interest in growing it. And the digital department sort of grew to fill in this community that they had built from the show.
And presumably when you're talking about digital, you're not thinking it's just one lump. I assume it's quite discrete in terms of your approaches to this is something we're going to use for YouTube, this is something we're going to put on Snapchat, this is going to something for Instagram.
There's a meeting, as soon as we're done taping a show in the control room in the afternoon, there's a digital team that sits, Daniel and his team and the producers, and they'll go through every moment of the show and they'll say, this is going to work, on Snapchat because it's funny, it's Ed Sheeran surprising a kid, this is going to work on YouTube. And so they'll have, it's not really a debate, it's a conversation about, okay, we've got a half dozen pieces of content, we're going to put them out, what's going first, what's going second, what's going third, and how is this going to benefit the audience in each platform the most?
We definitely think with that in mind. And now, it used to be sort of, the 1.0 was we would shoot the show and then put content on YouTube. And now that we've seen so much, digital success, I think it started to inform who we're booking on the show, and that there are certain people that may not be perfectly in the strike zone of our television audience that is slightly older, slightly more female skewing, but we know that it is going to kill it for our YouTube audience, and that's worth a booking on our show. And so that was the 1.1 was really sort of creating our talk show with our YouTube audience in mind. And then the 1.2 was creating original content with these YouTube stars or stars that we think would fit better for our YouTube audience, specifically for our digital audience, right? We only get an hour of content on TV every day, but digitally we can create as much as we want. So we find these stars like Sophia, Grace, and Rosie, and we have them on the show, but we also then created digital content around them just to sort of continue to feed the beast.
I want to have a look at a clip now, actually, that's interesting in terms of the difference between content creation for television and YouTube, because this clip I don't think we would have seen in a kind of pre-YouTube world. Let's have a look. But it's interesting because you kind of see how then it's affecting, like, popular culture is directly affecting the stuff that you're putting on. It's all feeding into that cycle. And when you find something like that, do you know that it's going to work from the first couple that come in?
Ooh, that's a great question. What's really exciting about the format of our show, right? We create a new hour of television every day. Is that it really is a playground, a great territory to try out things, right? So if it works, great. If it doesn't, we move on to the next day, right? And we definitely have those moments where we're in the control room and we watch something play out and we think, oh, this is going to be really a lot of fun. This, I think, is a great example, right? Here we have our audience creating the content for us. And I think we put it out there thinking, who knows what we'll get? And you come in the next day and you realize that there are thousands of videos on YouTube all over the world of people creating this really fun content that stands alone, right? It works great for them on their YouTube channels, but then also serves as great content on our show. So,
and it's when Ellen does a call to action asking for people to do dance dares, and then you get some from countries that the talk show doesn't even air in, that just sort of shows the power of the distribution model and the fact that people are sort of consuming our content and are fans of the brand when they don't live in a country where the Ellen DeGeneres show even airs. We think that's cool. We think that there's something to be said for that, and it's interesting where we'll, in the topical meeting, they'll see some dance dares. Ellen will want to celebrate them by showing them, and then she'll ask for more, and then we've got a lot of content that we can choose to do what we want with. So it's an example of them both feeding each other in a way that didn't exist.
You mentioned that the way that you book guests has kind of evolved, because you would look at someone who you knew would resonate online, not necessarily in your kind of target TV audience. Have you seen that kind of evolution in terms of the actual content that you're putting on the show, the type of games that you might do on the TV show?
I think to some extent, yes. We see, the whole digital movement has really changed our show. We can do things on the show and use, we do these live Twitter hits, for example, where we'll send out a tweet saying, hey, University of Michigan, we're going to be downtown in Ann Arbor, bring your best Halloween costume or whatever, and we'll have 300 people vying, because if Ellen's giving it away, they know they're going to get something good, they're going to have fun, they're going to get on television, all their friends are going to see them on the Ellen show. It becomes, a moment on that campus, and that's an example of us using digital to sort of like create a live event for a segment on our show. Do we book guests differently? Yeah, I'd say that we might book guests that that their TV show has, tens and tens of millions of social followers. In the same way, we book guests with an idea towards doing content with them, either on the show or backstage, that we have a good idea, and Daniel's team have a good idea that it's actually going to take off and be like a moment that we can take advantage of. So it's sort of good to get these people in the building that have a huge social media following, that have a huge, YouTube presence and whatnot. I mean, do you think it's changed a lot?
Sure. I think that it all becomes stuff that informs our executive producers of the audience that's consuming their content, right? And so they sit down to create content for all of their audience, and the more they learn about what delights their YouTube audience and their TV show audience informs the content that they're creating.
You talked earlier about looking at what's successful online, something that seems to be equally funny gets 5,000 hits versus 100,000 hits. How much do you do with like the numbers and analytics, and how much do you do just with a kind of hunch about what's going to work?
We're very hunch-based, I would say.
It starts with a gut.
That's the pull-out quote from this section. We're hunch-based.
We're hunch-based.
Well, going back to, there's a lot of television producers in this room. At some point, you have to trust your gut, and you feel like you know good content, and you know what your audience. So you've got two different ideas. You're going to pick one that you think is going to resonate most with your audience. Having said that, we do look at data. We look at how many page views things get every morning. We look at our minute-by-minute ratings for the television show. We look at, sometimes you just get a sense because people call you. When my daughter comes home from high school and can tell me about who was on the show that day because she saw the Snapchat thing that Daniel set up backstage, and she sees the guests on live before they come on, and the show doesn't air till the next day. There's value in that, and there's power in that. So you get a sense for what's working and what's not. A lot of it's hunch, and some of it's actually looking. When things blow up, there are clips that we'll put up that, there's a rapper in America called Chance the Rapper, and he came on our show. Now, he's not going to get on a lot of daytime shows in America because his music just doesn't speak to that audience, but Ellen loves music, and our producers love music, and they want to be on the cutting edge, and they want to deliver to our audience things that are new and things that are up and coming. So we'll put Chance the Rapper on our talk show, which has a, women 25 to 50-year-old demo, and we'll wake up in the morning and it'll have 800,000 views on YouTube or whatever the number is. We have an eye to that, and we are very proud of that because we feel like we're delivering things to our audience first before other shows.
And because you're producing so much content, do you feel more able to take risk then? And kind of go where you go, I don't know if this is going to work, but I feel like it might.
Yeah, I think that, one thing Ellen and the producers are not as afraid to fail. We filled 5 hours a week plus all the digital stuff. We're gonna obviously put some stuff out there that's not gonna resonate, but that's okay because as long as we trust our gut and keep on going down the road that we're on, we feel like our results are gonna be good because our track record is good. So a lot of times, we try to create an environment where people are not afraid to fail, where people are afraid to take chances and try to do things. And a lot of our comedy for a daytime talk show is very, very forward-thinking and very, very clever. And maybe it's not something that our entire audience is going to get, but enough people will get it where it feels like, for the writers and the team, it feels justified.
Let's have a look at a very successful clip. This is the most viewed clip on the Ellen YouTube channel. Had over 122 million views. So Sophia, Grace and Rosie became Ellen Show regulars. They hosted red carpets for the show. Sophia Grace now has her own YouTube channel with over 2.5 million subscribers. How do you make that jump from a one-off segment to recurring segments?
Wigs.
You go to Essex and you find two little cute kids.
Yeah.
Put them in a wig.
Yeah.
Done. Internet gold.
I mean, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle, and one of our producers saw that video that Sophia Grace's dad had posted on YouTube and just saw it and said, oh my God, like if there's ever a segment I want to produce on the Ellen Show, it's this. And she ran in and interrupted Ellen and the producers having their morning meeting and said, just watch this. And that's the kind of clip where you just, when you see it, and they saw it and said, yes, tomorrow, get her here. And the funny thing is, sometimes we book these stories as they're beginning to go viral. By the time they get on the plane, in this case, fly from Heathrow to the States, all of a sudden their clip has millions of more views because it's all happening in real time. You can't wait for it. When we book these stories, you can't think that, oh, well, we saw it on YouTube, but no one else did, so we're going to book them on the show. No. By the time they get there, you've got record producers trying to get in the building. It becomes like a whole little phenomena. So when they came, and the show reached out to Nicki Minaj, and Nicki Minaj saw the video as well and said, oh my God, I'd love to meet them. We'll set up this whole surprise. It all sort of came together, but had the producers hesitated for 10 minutes, those kids and their parents would have been somewhere else. And they, I think, knew who Ellen was and they wanted to come. But we knew that we had a little bit of lightning in a bottle, We also knew that we had to protect these families because their lives were going to change once this show aired, and we wanted to be very respectful of that, and we didn't want to take advantage of that situation. And you know, we just struck up a relationship with them. We sent them on a few chores to do for the show, and each time it just got bigger and bigger, and it was really, really fun. We ended up making a movie with them, Sophia and Grace's princess situation, whatever
Princess
it was called.
Situation. I
Yeah.
think that was.
Do you now have a look, because we know that you can get formats out of segments from talk shows, so you know, lip sync battle, couple karaoke. Do you have an eye on that now, thinking about formats that could grow from the Ellen Show?
Yeah, we do. There's games that we play on the Ellen Show that people have always asked us, let's turn this into a game. Let's do something. And we believe, and the producers I think rightly believe, that there are things that sometimes are magic in 5 to 6 minutes, and when you take that same idea and make it 30 minutes, it's not quite as magic because it just doesn't have legs as long. So we look at things that we feel like we can really, really take advantage of. And one thing that Kevin Lehman, who's our head writer and one of our executive producers, he creates the majority of all the games that you see on the Ellen Show, which are really, really funny. And it's not just about the strategy of the gameplay, it's also about getting Ellen to laugh. Because when the audience gets to see Ellen laughing because she's so amused by the game, it works. And it's like 1 + 1 = 3 at that point. So what we did was we created a new television show from a lot of the different games that will be on the air in the States in the new year, in January, February, for NBC, called Ellen's Game of Games. And instead of just taking one game and making it a half-hour trivia show, we take like a dozen games and play them over different episodes, and they're all fun, and they're all hilarious, and we're really, really excited about that. But yeah, we do look at formats. You know, cable channels call us all the time about things like Dance Dares, for example. But you just have to be careful about not taking advantage of something and really believing that it lasts for 30 minutes or an hour versus the 6 minutes of gold that we get on the Ellen Show.
So don't milk it, basically.
Yeah, don't milk it.
What's the next thing then? When you look forward to 2018, how are you going to move things on with the Ellen Show and the digital side?
You're up, kid.
Well, one thing I'm really excited about is we're actually creating an original series for YouTube called Ellen Show Me More Show that's going to be premiering on September 19th exclusively on YouTube, which I think is just really cool. You know, we've been talking about, you know, we've had so many learnings from our YouTube audience specifically of what they like, what kinds of content resonate with them, and this is our first opportunity to create content exclusively for them. So it's really an exciting, interesting project.
And so what's the format, durations, and is it a playlist? How's it going to look?
It's going to be 2 playlists twice weekly. Around 11 minutes each in length, and it will feel very conceptually like the show. It's not a talk show, though; it's a variety show, and so it really is getting to the heart of a lot of like the clips that we've seen here of things that we know will do well specifically with our YouTube audience, and creating them exclusively for the show.
I think we've got a clip that hasn't been seen before from the new show.
Yes, this is no one has seen this yet.
You're in for a treat. Here we go.
We were really happy with how that turned out. I think it's a great example of what we've been talking about, taking content that is actually taking content that aired on our show and putting it through this filter of our YouTube audience, right? There's this trending video concept called Draw My Life that everyone on YouTube loves, the idea of taking the narrative of their lives and creating an animated version. So now we're creating these animated sketches of some of our favorite stories from the show and giving it back to the YouTube audience that way.
And can you tell us about any other features that you've got lined up for it, or you don't have to? I mean, you sort of do.
Sure. Well, we have a recurring bit that we're doing called Ellen's Burning Questions, where these celebrity guests have rapid-fire questions from Ellen that they have to answer as quickly as possible. And I think I think it's safe to say that
It's hilarious.
Our first one is going to be with Kim Kardashian for the premiere. So
It's a sort of soft launch.
Yeah, right?
You're about to learn a whole lot more about Kim Kardashian.
Oh, good,
than
good.
you ever thought you could.
Rosa was anymore. Okay, we have got time for some questions from you guys. Would anyone like to ask a question? Yes, gentleman here. Can we get him a microphone? In your own time, obviously. Slower. There we go.
All right. Obviously, we've seen some of Ellen's funniest moments, but what has been your funniest moment from all the seasons?
Favorite moments from the seasons?
Wow. You know, Adele comes to mind. Sophia, Grace, and Rosie come to mind. There was a skit where this is years ago when she would get on the phone with an old woman named. Do you remember the lady's name that would call in? Marge.
Let's call her Marge.
Let's call her Marge.
Yeah.
So Marge would call in and talk to Ellen, and she was an old lady
Gladys.
Gladys would watch the show, and she was very, very funny. Not trying to be funny, but she would talk to Ellen, and we never really saw what Gladys looked like. We had a caricature of her that we had drawn because she would never send us a picture. And she was talking, and she would make Ellen laugh. And there's something, regardless of what we do, whether it's a remote thing or whether it's Adele there, when there's a split screen of Ellen laughing hysterically, it just sort of makes you feel good, and it really, really resonates. And even a lot of our games, to me, it's the cutaway of Ellen laughing hysterically, playing blindfolded musical chairs, that's just as funny as the actual game of blindfolded musical chairs. So in this regard, she's telling Ellen a story, and she starts to get tripped up, and she's like, oh, honey, you know, I love Jesus, but I drink a little. And she couldn't really finish the story because she had had a few pops. And Ellen lost herself. She almost fell out of her chair. Her eyes were watering. We had to fix her makeup, but she couldn't stop laughing at, like, honey, I love Jesus, but I drink a little when I'm talking to you. And it's like those types of moments that just, when you see her being so happy, the magic of television, whether it's on your TV screen at home or whether it's on your, box on your computer, if we can sort of convey that emotional feeling for that moment that transcends from Ellen to our audience, that's sort of like, for us, the zeitgeist, like that's our favorite stuff. And that one was a very early on one years ago that goes back in memory as being very memorable.
One of my favorite things that we do is take clips from the internet that are blowing up like infomercials, right? Zany products. And there were two sort of blowing up at the same time. One was this product where it was like a stool that sort of splayed out as you sat on it, and it like sort of helped you do squats in this very strange way. And the other was the shake weight, which was that like a dumbbell with a spring that you had to shake it. And so Ellen decided she should probably try both at the same time. So she stood up and she's like doing these weird squats and using a shake weight. And it was
We almost
hilarious.
got taken off the air.
And she said, just off the cuff, she said, I don't know what I'm training for, but I hope it never happens. And I think that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
I say, mine's been the fake nails when she put the nails on and
Man.
they didn't sit right. And they're all floppy and stuff. It was just hilarious.
Yeah, that was Jen Pinkston, who was our one of our costume people, and had to run out and get these complicated gloves on Ellen while we were airing a clip of a crazy infomercial. And just my favorite is the panic that Jen has of knowing she needs to get these gloves on her in 20 seconds. And then the first one takes like 17 seconds, and she knows she's totally screwed.
Any more questions? Yes, gentleman at the back over here. So I'm going to make you work. Oh, no, you're all right.
Hello. Pete Price from the Media Podcast. It's a fascinating discussion. You touched on the idea that you have to safeguard some of your guests because they end up in these viral videos. Can you explain what actually happens to some of these people who end up going viral because of a video you've published?
Rehab, isn't it?
Opportunities, really. It's different for different people. I'll give you an example. Before Sophia, Grace, and Rosie, there was a young man named Grayson Chance who played the piano, and he covered Lady Gaga's Paparazzi at his high school gym, and his sister thought it was really good, and she uploaded it. it went viral and it blew up because here was this young, at the time, 12, 13 years old, singing his heart out to Lady Gaga, and it was just this unbelievable moment. So we booked him on The Ellen Show, and we brought him out. As he was on his way to Burbank, to California, the video was going viral. And this was like a year or two after Justin Bieber had really sort of blown up from being on YouTube. So if you're a music producer in Los Angeles, you're thinking, here's Justin Bieber 2.0. We got to get over to The Ellen Show. He's going to be on tomorrow. We just heard about it on the radio. So by the time he got here, we literally had people from the record industries trying to sneak into our audience to get to this kid and to get to his mom. We recognized that Ellen actually created a record label in order to sign this kid. She's just like, we got to sign him. We're like, well, we're a talk show. We don't really have a music label. It's like, get a record label. We got to have a record label. She gets Jimmy Iovine on the phone. I need a label on Interscope. She actually gets a label on Interscope. And then she's like, we got to have a producer. So she calls Guy Oseary, who at the time was the manager of Madonna, now of U2 as well, and calls Lady Gaga's manager, Troy Carter. They come over there. So I meet Grayson Chance and his mom for the first time in Ellen's dressing room with Guy Oseary and Troy Carter, two of the biggest, they don't even know why they're there. They're like, Ellen said to come over, get over to Burbank. So they rush over there, and Ellen's like, here's this kid, Grayson Chance. He's going to be unbelievable, and you're going to sign him to a new label. You guys are his managers, and it honestly all happened, and it was that fast. So if you're Grayson Chance's mom from Oklahoma, you're like, what the hell is going on, and what happens in California? So we needed to protect her and made sure that, like, the first thing we needed to do is say, okay, the phone's going to ring tomorrow. News cameras are going to honestly come to your house. Don't talk to them. And there's going to be a record producer in Oklahoma that's going to want to take advantage of you. Just, here's an attorney, be smart. Well, you know, so you got to take care of people because you're changing their life pretty fast. For Grayson's opportunity, it was fantastic because he wanted to pursue music. He took some time off school. He began his music career. He actually got a record deal. He made a record. He got to travel. Going back to the Philippines, he's huge in the Philippines. The guy kills it. He still gets paid a lot of money to go there and perform. But, you know, we changed his life, and so he was able to start his recording career. Sophia Grace and Rosie, you know, Sophia Grace's dad is a guy who lives in, I think, Essex, outside of London.
I would say so, yeah.
And he wanted to be in the States. He wanted to be in show business. They had that opportunity. But, you know, there are different opportunities for different people, but you've got to be respectful that these are human beings. And going on the Ellen Show is going to change their life. So you want to help them make sure that it's for the better and not for the worse, because her whole mantra is based around kindness and treating people with respect, and we need to follow that creed.
Yes, guy in the middle here.
Hey, given the success that you've had on YouTube now, and you started the journey on linear television 15 years ago, if you were starting this again today, would you think we could just do this on YouTube?
What an interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel will have insight into this as well, but I would say 5 years ago, my answer would have been different, and 5 years from now, my answer will be different. To me, this whole thing is like a bit of the ocean that's moving, and every 6 months, it seems to change a little bit more, and there's younger audiences that are consuming content in different ways. So that means one thing if you're producing a television show on Netflix. It means a different thing if you're producing a daytime talk show that's broadcast on television stations across America and in 22 countries outside of that. If the advertisers and the business model supports it, absolutely, absolutely. There are things that work on YouTube because it's easily shareable that you want to watch and you want to consume and you want to share. And I think that really speaks well to our show. That speaks well to James Corden's show. And there's other shows that it might not as much. So to me, the way it's going, I don't see why you can't produce any type of content and have it be anywhere. To me, the important thing is you've got to be where the fans are. Ellen fans are going to be in multiple different places. Our job is to be there and not to kid ourselves that, well, if they like Ellen so much, they won't go to this platform, they'll go to that platform. They're going to be where they're going to be, and we want to service them where they are. That's our goal, and that's changing a lot. Every year or so, we have to sort of scratch our heads and look at where we're putting out content and maybe adjust that a little bit because the fans they're mobile, and they're going to go where they want to go. Do you have any?
Yeah, just thinking about it, you bring up an excellent point that the landscape changes constantly. And what I would want for a show that we were launching now is to be with every possible audience that we can be, and I think that includes TV, absolutely. But I do think, the fact that we're creating this original series for YouTube is a great indication that YouTube is definitely, we've identified that audience as a very worthwhile and important audience to us.
Okay, yes, back here.
Why do you think it's been so difficult for US chat shows to be a success in the UK? They're obviously phenomenal over in the US, but many have tried in many places. Because you're much wittier and much more
clever than we are. It's a good question. I think that the UK, my parents are from Scotland. I spent a lot of time here, which is why I was so excited to come back. But there's definitely a sense of humor that the whole country gets, right? Regardless of what side of the tracks you're on, whether maybe you were born in private school or public school, the sense of humor, I think, works here, and everyone understands those jokes. And you guys, there is a certain wit about British humor and a certain cleverness that I think Ellen has. I would say maybe a lot of American comedy Brits might find to be slightly sophomoric, perhaps. And they think, I think that British people have really, really talented comedy brains, and so they've got enough to sort of satisfy that appetite. I think that Ellen does well here because, to me, her comedy sort of transcends things that you would be, it's not just a chat show interviewing a famous person to plug them about their movie. It's Adele, it's doing these types of things. So I'd like to think that hers does well, but I think you have enough quality stuff over here that you don't need to sort of import all these different shows, because I don't think it speaks to the sense of humor that is sort of that unifies Britain.
Mm-hmm. I think cultural relevance also plays a big part in it, but also opportunity. Ellie is on the telly because we could point to an audience that was ready to watch her on television. That fans in the UK that were watching these clips on YouTube and clearly were hungry for Ellen on TV.
Can I do one more question?
And thank you to ITV for stepping up and putting us on TV too.
Hiya. I'm just wondering about, obviously, so Ellen DeGeneres, as you said, is infectious when you see her laugh. All the moments are authentic and organic. Obviously, then that got put on YouTube, and now it seems it's not doing the opposite, but you're creating moments or trying to create authentic moments for YouTube for Ellen. Does that make sense? So how do you maintain the authenticity and organic moments to put on YouTube without making them like stunts, if that makes sense?
I think that they end up on YouTube. They just have to be hilarious, and they have to be funny, or they have to be surprising, and there's probably a little bit of heartfeltness that goes along with that. So it's not like you can just sort of say, okay, let's create 3 YouTube moments for this week and put those in a box. It won't ever work like that. It's just got to be hilarious, news-making stuff. And, we have a pretty good track record of creating those types of moments. And as soon as we know that it's going to do really, really well on YouTube. But I understand your question. You're not really forcing it for YouTube. You're forcing Adele eating grass in Jamba Juice, and then that becomes your moment for YouTube. But you can't really force the issue, because once you force the issue, then it's not going to work.
I once heard our executive producer, Ed Glavin, say this, and it stayed with me. Someone asked him about how to make a clip that'll go viral. And he said, the best way to guarantee that your video will not go viral is to approach it by saying, how do we make this go viral? And that really speaks to the way we approach content, right? We know what we do well, right? We know what Ellen's brand is. We want to be newsmaking, we want to be hilarious, we want to be heartfelt, and we always want to be caring, right? And so if we approach the content we're creating under that lens, we let the rest happen as it will.
That's a good place to leave it. Please join me in saying thank you very much to David and Daniel. And also quickly to our sponsors, who, would you believe, were YouTube.